Hi, this is another update for trainees on the scheme for registration, but also for graduates hoping to enrol on the scheme from the 1st of September. We've released today some detailed FAQs on our website that hopefully will answer some of the questions that you've been sending us via social media and also through email. But we realise that a number of your questions are about those of you who have returned to practice, wanting to know exactly what it is and it isn't you should be doing. So I'm here with Daniel Harden-McCartney, who is the college's clinical advisor, to help answer some of those questions. Hi, Daniel.
Hello.
Hi. So first of all, what is it that pre-reggers can and can't be doing now they're back in practice?
So actually, virtually everything a pre-reg can be doing. So right the way across the board from the very start. So all of the normal functions they'll be carrying out, like dispensing, telephone triage in terms of assessing whether patients have signs and symptoms of COVID, carrying out triage as to whether patients have symptoms which would be indicative that they need a face-to-face appointment. They could be carrying out the case history and symptoms as part of the initial part of the consultation, although they need to be aware that if they're not the people carrying out the consultation, that the person who is would need to repeat that or double check it. And site tests.
Okay, thanks, Daniel. And in terms of site test, you're saying it's absolutely safe for trainees to be carrying out routine eye examinations right now?
So it's a really good question. So the College of Optometrists have released some quite comprehensive guidance to ensure that it is safe to be in practice, and that involves a lot of additional infection control procedures, wearing PPE for face-to-face consultations, and also streamlining the consultation, so focusing on the patient's clinical need. But if the trainees follow that guidance, like all the other clinicians in the practice, then it is absolutely safe to be in practice performing face-to-face consultations.
Okay, and how long is it safe for a trainee to be spending over an examination? I've heard something about 15 minutes should be a kind of target time. Is that right?
Yes, that's a really good point. We do not list 15 minutes as a target time in the consultation. And in fact, some parts of it may mean that you take longer than you might normally would. In our guidance, we recommend that all clinicians, trainees, and fully qualified optometrists streamline their consultation. So that means they focus on the needs of the patient who has come in. So you wouldn't carry out blanket tests of things like tonometry or visual fields unless it was clinically indicated. You wouldn't carry out batteries of binocular vision tests unless their symptoms were of binocular vision cause or origin. So what you'll need to do is be quite agile, and rather than having a big battery planned site test laid out, you'll need to focus on your patient's needs and just streamline your consultation and do the bits that are relevant to what you need to do to solve your patient's problems. But in terms of time limits, we don't recommend a time limit. You should just work as quickly as you can to safely complete everything that you need to complete within the consultation. And you need to be mindful that it will take longer to don, that is put on, doff, take off your PPE, and carry out the infection control, wiping down the consulting room in between every patient.
Thanks, Daniel. And you said there, you mentioned streamlining the routine eye examination. How would you go about doing that? Is that something the supervisor could advise on?
Yes, so the supervisor will need to provide some support about, so beforehand, if you have the clinical records in advance, to look through the notes and map out whether you feel you need to perform things like visual fields tests and tonometry. Some parts of it you may need to think on your feet within the site test and determine whether aspects need to be in there or not, and then liaise with your supervisor during or at the end of the site test to say, you know, was that the right call to make? For example, in subjective refraction, when you're performing that and someone may have had a 025 SIL, whether you needed to do cross SIL and fan and block, or whether actually you didn't need to do that. So some of it can be planned in advance, some of it you'll need to retrospectively discuss with your supervisor to ensure that it's really focused on your patient's needs and you're not carrying out extra tests. And the reason why we don't want to carry out extra tests and you really need to is because that's extra instruments to disinfect, extra opportunities for there to be contamination of equipment, and also superfluous information just keeps the patient there longer than they need to be kept.
Okay, thank you, Dan. That's really helpful. You mentioned quite a lot about supervisors there, and I think that's going to be a big question is, what should the supervisor be doing in terms of supervising a trainee? And can they have remote supervision if perhaps the supervisor isn't on the practice or is somewhere watching by video? Would that be okay?
So that's a really good point. So the first principle is that the supervisor must be in the premises and they must be in a position able to intervene and come and help you or come perform part of the site test if they need to repeat it or to perform it if you're unable to. So they can't be supervising you from a long way away or even the other side of the town. They need to be in the premises. But what you do in your premises, you can be quite innovative. So you could take advantage of technology. If you've got shared server-based fundus cameras, OCTs, then actually they could be supervising, looking at those images from a different room. There will be, of course, situations when the supervisor will need to come into the room to have a conversation with you, with your patient, to check things. If they come into your consulting room and they're more than 2 meters away and they're not providing direct patient care, then they won't need to put on gloves and apron because they're not provided that direct patient care. They can just enter the room wearing their sessional face mask to help supervise you. If they need to step in and, let's say, perform a slit lamp, then that's a point when they'd need to put on gloves, aprons, because they're providing that direct patient care. But it's very important that I think trainees would continue to access their supervisor and get advice as they normally would in the pre-COVID time.
Okay, thank you very much, Daniel. I hope these questions have been useful for you as trainees and supervisors if you're watching as well. We'll continue to monitor this and offer you any advice as we come to it. But hopefully this will give you some guidance about what you should and shouldn't be doing in practice right now. Do check out the FAQs and look for our next update on the scheme for registration. Thanks.